The 21st century has given us groundbreaking sci-fi, but the best ones are the ones nobody watched. I am talking about mind-bending time travel paradoxes that will shatter your brain, sci-fi thrillers shot entirely in one room with zero CGI, military horror where ghosts become weapons, and a quantum leap thriller that redefined action. These are not your typical space operas or alien invasions, these are intelligent, philosophical, and terrifyingly plausible. While everyone was sleeping on Interstellar and Inception, these 5 films were quietly redefining the genre. Here are the 10 most underrated sci-fi movies of the 21st century, so far, hidden gems, starting with 5 absolute masterpieces. Imagine a time travel movie so mind-bending that it makes Inception look like a children's cartoon. Directed by the Spierig brothers, this adaptation of Robert A. Heinlein's legendary short story, All You Zombies, features Ethan Hawke as a temporal agent chasing a bomber who has been evading him across decades. But nothing is what it seems. The conflict is not man versus machine, it is man versus his own existence. The agent picks up a mysterious writer, Sarah Snook, giving a career-defining performance, who tells an impossible story about a girl abandoned at an orphanage, a mysterious stranger, and a transformation that defies biology. As the agent helps the writer track down the elusive bomber, the plot twists into a paradox so tight it threatens to collapse reality itself. The film asks, what if you were your own mother, your own father, and your own enemy? The climax is a jaw-dropping revelation. The agent has been chasing himself the entire time. The bomber, the writer, the mysterious stranger, they are all the same person, trapped in an infinite loop of causality. The final scene is devastatingly poetic. The agent realizes he cannot break the cycle because he is the cycle. He must become the bomber to ensure his own existence. The payoff is philosophical and chilling. This is not just a time travel movie, it is a meditation on identity, destiny, and the terrifying loneliness of being trapped in your own story. Duncan Jones' Source Code is the sci-fi thriller that everyone forgot, but it deserves to be remembered. Jake Gyllenhaal plays a soldier who wakes up on a train with no memory, forced to relive the same 8 minutes over and over to find a bomber. But the twist? He is already dead. The conflict is a terrifying blend of time loop tension and existential horror. Coulter Stevens, Gyllenhaal, is a helicopter pilot whose body is dead, but his consciousness is trapped in a quantum simulation called the Source Code. He is sent into the final 8 minutes of a dead man's life to identify a terrorist before a second attack kills millions. The film is a relentless race against time, with Stevens learning more about the victims, the bomber, and his own horrifying reality with each loop. The deeper he goes, the more he questions what is real. The climax is breathtaking. Stevens disarms the bomb, saves the train, and falls in love with a passenger, only to realize that he cannot change the past. But he refuses to accept that. In a stunning twist, he convinces his handler, Vera Farmiga, to let him go back one last time, not to stop the bomb, but to live the final 8 minutes of a dead man's life with meaning. The payoff is surreal. He creates a parallel universe where the attack never happened, and he survives. It is hopeful, tragic, and unforgettable. Nick Matthews' directorial debut is a $70 million Netflix original that looks like a blockbuster but feels like a paranoid thriller. A special forces team is deployed to a war-torn European city, only to discover that the enemy is invisible, untouchable, and utterly terrifying. Think Black Hawk Down meets The Mist. The conflict is brutal and claustrophobic. The soldiers cannot see what is killing them. They can only watch as their comrades drop dead, their eyes turning white, killed by an invisible force that defies physics. A skeptical scientist, Emily Mortimer, is brought in to explain the ghosts, but her science fails spectacularly. The film is a masterclass in tension. Every shadow is a threat. Every silence is a scream. The soldiers are trapped in a building with an enemy they cannot fight, and their only hope is to understand what they are dealing with. The climax reveals that the ghosts are not supernatural. They are experimental energy weapons gone rogue, killing anything with a heartbeat. The team must engineer a counterweapon using extreme cold to freeze the entities. The final action sequence is jaw-dropping, with the soldiers using liquid nitrogen to shatter invisible enemies. The payoff is pure sci-fi catharsis. This is the blockbuster Netflix never promoted properly, and it deserves a second life. It is intelligent, tense, and visually stunning. Before Smile and Talk to Me made cursed object horror mainstream, Polaroid was doing it smarter. Based on Lars Klevberg's terrifying short film, this is the story of a high schooler who finds a vintage Polaroid camera, only to discover that anyone photographed by it dies within 24 hours. And the entity in the photos? It is coming for her next. The conflict is a desperate race against time. Every photo bird, Catherine Prescott, summons a grotesque, shadowy entity that stalks the subject until they are brutally killed. She and her friends must unravel the camera's dark history before they all become portraits. But here is the twist: the camera does not just kill, it exposes your deepest secrets and darkest traumas. The entity feeds on guilt, shame, and fear, making it impossible to run. The film is relentless, using jump scares and creeping dread to keep you on edge. The climax is a brutal showdown inside a high school, where Bird confronts the entity head-on. She discovers that the camera was once owned by a serial killer who used it to trap his victims' souls, immortalizing their terror forever. To survive, she must destroy the camera, and risk destroying herself in the process. The payoff is surprisingly emotional. Bird sacrifices herself to save her friends, but the final twist reveals that the curse has been passed on to a new owner. It is smart, bloody, and thoroughly underrated horror sci-fi. Imagine a sci-fi movie with no special effects, no spaceships, and no explosions, just a group of professors in a living room having a conversation. Now imagine that conversation changes everything you thought you knew about human history. That is The Man from Earth, and it is a masterpiece. The conflict is entirely intellectual. John Oldman, David Lee Smith, is a college professor who reveals to his colleagues that he is a Cro-Magnon caveman who has survived for over 14,000 years. As his friends, an anthropologist, a biologist, a historian, a psychiatrist, and a devout Christian, interrogate him, the conversation becomes a battlefield. Is John telling the truth? Is he insane? Or is he something far more terrifying? The film forces you to question everything: religion, history, evolution, and the very nature of humanity. The climax is a gut punch. The psychiatrist, who has been the most skeptical, suddenly realizes that John is his own father, a man who abandoned him decades ago, a man who never aged. The emotional breakdown is devastating. John confesses that he has loved and lost thousands of times, and he will continue to watch everyone he loves die. The payoff is hauntingly beautiful. This is sci-fi at its purest: big ideas, no budget, and a script so tight it will leave you breathless. These 5 films prove that sci-fi does not need a billion-dollar budget to blow your mind. From the cursed photography of Polaroid to the time-bending paradoxes of Predestination, from the quantum loops of source code to the ghost war terror of Spectral, and the intellectual brilliance of The Man from Earth, these are the hidden gems that deserve your attention. They challenge you, frighten you, and make you think. That is what great cinema does. If you want to find more underrated masterpieces before they disappear into the algorithm, hit that like button, drop a comment telling me which film you are watching first, and subscribe for more deep dives into the films everyone else is ignoring.